So what we're gonna do is, because we weren't sure like who was gonna be with us and how much people were gonna know about us, so Jodi's gonna share just a real brief background on us from basically the last 3-4 years, and then we're going to go through this handout that we have for you guys and get real practical with some things. And then hopefully, even though we're a little short on time, hopefully have some time for questions in case you guys have any at the end. So that is our goal. Jodi, if you don't mind, go ahead and get started, and I'll give these.
So I'll just do a brief background. We started Live with Purpose Church, which is our church in Conestoga, in April of 2016, after less than a year of planning to do it. Our boys were 12, 10, 7, and 3 at the time. So, and Ryan was working a full-time job, like 10 to 12-hour days, Monday through Friday, and started fitting ministry responsibilities into evenings and weekends as he could. So into that, that's how we started. About 9 months or a year into that, we started feeling like it wasn't working, like it was too much. There was a disconnect with our family and marriage, and it wasn't working the way we wanted it to work. It was just too much. So through us praying about that and talking through, our feelings with each other about it, doors opened for Ryan to be able to move out of his full-time job and get 3 part-time jobs, one being a role in the church of just being pastor part-time. And so those 3 roles actually created more flexibility for us than his one full-time job. So it was great, but we still needed to learn how to be more intentional with the time that we did have for each of the things going on in our life. So we could see that we had to become better planners. We're not planners. We're just often we'll say to each other, we'll just see how it goes. Like, we'll see what happens. Yeah. So we had to work on that, and not just to react and respond to everything that was coming our way. So we've been and continue to be in that process of reassessing how to do things and staying open to doing things differently than maybe we're comfortable with or that we're used to. So just trying to be open to change and reevaluate as life progresses and things change. So some of the things that we've done or tried.
This is the practical application.
A yearly calendar, which we never did before, going ahead of the year, and it was so foreign to us. So setting aside time for the important things, not letting our calendar control us, but us having some control over our calendar. Not that we can dictate everything, obviously. That was one thing we did.
Yeah, yearly calendar. The beauty of the yearly calendar, even though it seems like if you've never done that before, it's like, what is, you get to decide what is most important to you guys as a couple or as a family. And you put those things in the calendar so that when life is crazy, later on it's like, oh, sorry, we already have something scheduled that day. Yeah. You know what I mean? We have a vacation plan or whatever. You don't have to have all the details, but it's just on that big scale saying we're setting aside this time and being intentional about it.
Yeah, and we actually, Pastor Joe and Jen, who co-pastor with us, they're really big on that. They're the ones that help
Pastor
us
Joe's
do that. So,
on it.
So another thing was scheduling a certain number of monthly times to intentionally connect with people, other couples, individually, meeting with guys, with Ryan and I meeting with some ladies, putting that on the calendar on a regular basis, so it actually happened.
Our personalities are different, so I'm not a complete extrovert, but I'm more extroverted than Jodi, and so I would tend to want to be inviting people over all the time or whatever, and that creates stress, and so we had to kind of come together and say, well, what, how much is okay? You know, it might be less than I want, more than she wants, but we agree to it. And we schedule that in a month so that it's not, you know, me after church just being like, hey, like, come over, and then she's feeling like, well, now I have to host these people. So yeah, just finding
Not
that
that I don't
balance.
like hosting, it's just.
No, I know.
All the time.
but not constantly,
Right.
and not spur of the moment, right?
Right.
Where like I'm just making plans at random, and she has to like deal with it by scheduling in advance. Again, just being intentional.
Yeah, and then weekly calendar. Sunday evenings have been our time to just, okay, what's going on this week? We have 2 boys that are in sports, which, you know, as the kids are getting older, you know, they have their own schedules that we need to work with too, so it's not just ours. So it's, you know, sitting down and who's gonna run who, where, when, and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, just weekly, we check in with each other and do that.
Yeah, and that's been really good. That time, knowing that we're going to have that time, and we're going to set aside that time every week. For us, again, it's Sunday night, which is just kind of logical depending on the flow of your week. Like, okay, Sunday night, like, let's prep for the week ahead. Let's look at the calendar. Let's see what's happening. Let's be on the same page. Has been a really great time for us to connect. Yeah. I look forward to it, actually. It's not a business meeting. It's like, how are we going to attack this thing together?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, and then,
That's all I have.
yeah, we also do a daily. So what I wanted you guys to see is that we've been learning to stretch out, like in a macro sense, and say, okay, you know, we're going to look at the whole entire year coming up, but then we're also looking at things on a monthly basis. We're also looking at things on a weekly basis, and we're also looking at things on a daily basis. So every night, essentially, with some exceptions, we're looking at the next day together. And that's something that, like, I mean, I know they say don't, you know, have screens in your bedroom or whatever, but like for us, that's just where it happens. Like, we're shutting it down for the night. It's like, okay, let's just real quick, what's tomorrow? You know, what are the key things? And we can then end our day and therefore start our day on the same page because we took that time. And again, that's a great connection for us, that daily connection of like, we got to talk. Even if we don't feel like talking because it was a long day, like we have to talk. And then usually we end up talking about more than just the schedule because that, you know, forced us to talk. So it's good. We're gonna dig into the handout that I gave you guys, but when I feel like this was not in our notes, but when Mark and Abby were speaking, I felt like the Lord like impressed this on me, and I want to make sure that you guys don't miss it. We're going to be talking about like really practical, tangible things that you guys can maybe, you know, talk about, maybe implement. But I felt like the Lord was like, you need to make sure that you don't come across as like there's a formula that like, you know, you just do these things and it works out. The Bible is very clear, not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit.
Amen.
We have to have the Spirit of God helping us and giving us supernatural ability to do these things. You know, otherwise we're kind of faking it until you make it. Without God's help, you're going to be trying to do it on your own strength, and it's not going to work. You're going to run out of strength. It has to come from His supernatural power and ability.
Good stuff.
And if you look at Abraham and Sarah, when God calls Abraham, I'm not going to read it, but God says, you know, leave where you're at and go to this other place. And then He lists all the things that He's going to do. God's like, I'm going to make you this, and I'm going to do this for you, and it's all God. All Abraham had to do, and Sarah with him, was step out and obey. And be like, okay, God, we're willing to let you change the way we do things and where we're at and how we handle things. You understand what I'm saying? We're willing to let you lead, and then it's God who does all the rest. And so I really want to make sure that you guys come away with that and not just focused on the practical, tangible things. Does that make sense?
Amen.
Yep, good stuff.
Cool. The other thing was that there's no professional marriages. I mean, I don't normally dress like this. I just wanted to look, presentable for you guys. And, I didn't say she made me.
No.
But like, we're all just trying to work it out. You know what I mean? Like, just because we were asked to share doesn't mean that like we've got it all figured out and you don't. Like, I'm sure there's stuff that you guys could teach us from your marriages. And so I just want to make sure you know that like we don't see it that way. We're just trying to figure it out as well. And so I was glad that we were able to come today as well to receive. So we're going to run out of time if we don't jump right into our handout. So let's do that. And I tried to leave a little bit of space if you want to take some notes or whatever on the paper itself. And I'm a visual person. I don't know, like it seems like guys especially are like visual learners. Like you got to show me. Yeah. And so we're trying to help you there. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the word balance, because that's what we're talking about. Balance of, what was it? Marriage, family, and ministry. And I would add in there work, but then that starts to get kind of long. So I understand. But you get it, right? We're trying to balance all these things. And so what was fascinating to me is that balance has so many applications and different pictures of balance and what balance is. And so we're going to look at some nouns of balance, which is like a static. The noun versions are static, right? It's just like a state of being. And then we're going to flip over to the other side, don't jump ahead, and look at verbs, which is action, doing. So what does balance look like in practice, okay? So number one there is balance is a condition in which different elements are equal or in the correct proportions. And if you look at the picture there of the balanced rocks, right, I think that when we hear someone say, especially from a Christian perspective, like we want balance, in our lives and we want to hold everything in balance. Sometimes I think this is the typical picture that we see in our minds when we're thinking of that, is this like Zen state of everything, everything is perfectly still and serene and nothing's moving or shaking or getting knocked around, right? But that's not life. Life isn't like that. Life isn't like these rocks that like you set it up and you're like, there it is. We did it. We're done. Right? We're done. And now we can just sit back and look at this perfect thing that we've created that's perfectly balanced. Right? But that's so typical. That is our typical goal. Like Abby and Mark talked about marriage goals. Like, and you might say, well, we want to have a balanced, family life and ministry and whatever. Like, this is not the goal. Number one is not the goal. Okay? Because in that type of balance, if that's what you're going for, it's so precarious. You just get it right, and then something changes, and the whole thing falls apart.
Come on.
And now you're constantly frustrated because your perfect little thing that you created keeps getting messed up.
Come on.
So your kids are driving you crazy because they keep messing up the balance. And church is a problem because they keep asking for more. They always need more help.
Come on.
And so you're frustrated at everything. Work keeps needing more of me. Everything is a problem because you are trying to maintain something that is impossible. It's impossible in real life. So going down to number 2, I need a volunteer.
Joe.
I need a volunteer.
Joe.
These are 15s. This is nothing for you, Joe.
Joe got the guns.
All right, I'm gonna hold one and you're gonna hold one, okay? So the second definition of balance is an even distribution of weight, enabling something or someone or something to remain upright and steady. Come over here with me, Joe. Okay? So as this weight moves, you become unbalanced. Okay? So our tendency, again, is to want to keep the weight right here in the middle, where it's even, right? And it's balanced. The problem is that you don't really get much stronger if you just keep everything right here in the middle where it's safe and it's easy. What we're going to do is weight transfer. So what you have to be able to do is transfer the weight out what happens is your core muscles have to contract to keep you from falling over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And just go from side to side slowly, Joe. Now you can't see what his muscles are doing, but if anybody else wants to try this, this is an excellent exercise. Because it works not only your upper body, but your core. So what's happening is, if you try to stay here all the time, because this is balanced and this feels comfortable to you, you're not going to get stronger. Your marriage isn't going to get stronger. Your ministry isn't going to get stronger. Your relationships with your family is not going to get stronger. You have to be able to extend out beyond your little safe place, which might be your home, right?
Come on.
It might be just you and your spouse. You got to be able to extend out if you want to get stronger, okay?
Come on.
So balance does not necessarily mean keeping everything here in a safe place. It means that you put in the effort to develop the muscles so that you can hold more and more weight farther and farther out. You can extend out farther and farther and hold that weight without falling over. Thank you, Joe.
Good
That
job.
deserves a mid-message clap.
I missed that.
He said that deserves a mid-message clap.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. So, number three, a balance is an apparatus. It's a mechanism for weighing with a central pivot, a beam, and a pair of scales, right? So a balance, you could say, is the scales. Okay? So again, when you're a single person, that balancing act is pretty simple. It's you on one side and what you want on the other side. And you're just balancing those two things. It's super easy. Now you get married, and there's a second set of what you want and, you need. And that's the picture here of the four-person seesaw. And as you add kids and other things, you just keep adding, right? You just keep adding pieces to this, and it's all, everybody's vying for what they want and need. It's easy to be selfish, right? And do it that way.
Yeah.
But, sometimes we're genuinely trying to help each other. And we're trying to manage what we have to manage. But, things are moving around. And that's what I wanted you guys to see there. Yes, you do need dedicated time for your marriage. You do need dedicated time for work, for family, for ministry. You need to set aside time for each one of those things.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that it's out of balance. It just means that you have to be able to let the balance shift from time to time. But the key is not to leave anybody on their seesaw high and dry. You remember as a kid when somebody would stick you up in the air and you're just like your legs are dangling? Don't leave anybody in your family feeling like their legs are dangling, because you just you shifted the balance all to your side. This is what needs to happen, and you can deal with it. Just sit there, right? Don't do that. If it has to shift one way or another, that's okay. But make sure that there's time for shifting back, right? So, number 4, the definition of balance is a counteracting weight or force. And I gave you a very oversimplified diagram of a construction crane here. And so you'll see the central pivot, the load out on the end of the arm, and a counterweight. So, I wanted to go to college for engineering, so I love this kind of stuff, but I didn't last. And what I want you guys to get from this picture, the diagram, is that you and your spouse are that counterweight, right? Like Joe and I were demonstrating with the dumbbells. You guys are that counterweight that allows you to stretch out and do work to get done. And so you have to be together as a couple in order to hold down the fort, so to speak, so that your family can stretch out and do work and get things done. And that's why we said there, it takes 2 yeses to make 1 yes in ministry as a family. Again, if you're a single person, you can just say yes to whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
There's a need in the church or whatever, you're like, yeah, I'll do it.
Right.
no big deal. Once you are one, now it takes both of you to say yes in order for you to do that work. Because if it's only one of you on the counterbalance side, and the other one's like, oh, I never signed up for this, right? You're not going to be able to get that work done. So the more you can do together, the better. If you can serve as a couple, if you can serve as a family, like for us, planting the church turned out to be that was not on our radar at all, but turned out to be a great thing for our kids. They have this like sense of ownership of it that we didn't anticipate. And we're able to like do things. We don't have to force them to serve or to do things. It's just what we do. We just do it as a family. And it's been really cool. So look for those opportunities to do things together, to be that counterweight with each other so that you can stretch out and do the work that God has called you to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Man. Time flies. I'm having fun. So maybe it's not flying for you, but flip over to the verb side of balance. So again, we're talking about putting these things into action, right? So what is balance? To put or keep something in a steady position so that it does not fall. And like we talked about with the balanced rocks, right? Life doesn't work like that. The balance point is always going to be shifting and moving. And so you have to constantly be moving the pieces around in order to keep that thing balanced, okay? And that's what I said there, like you can put something into balance, but keeping it balanced that's the difficult part. And it requires you to be flexible and to remain flexible. Don't become rigid in your, right? Like I thought we talked about this. Like we had this figured out. It was all working so well. Well, sorry, but like life changed.
Right.
You have to be flexible with it.
Yeah.
If you become rigid, it's gonna fall apart. And so, Jodi, can you talk about how Mark and Abby talked about this a little bit, but
Yeah,
communication,
yeah.
how it's so important.
The one thing I thought about was at one point when before he had switched jobs, I think, I was just feeling like it was not balanced at all. But my struggle was I was feeling bad. Like I knew he was carrying a lot and I didn't want to put like what I was dealing with on him because I was like, he's gonna feel bad and like, I don't know. So I was struggling with even sharing with him how I was feeling, but I did eventually. And it helped him understand what I was dealing with, and it made me feel better talking to him about it. So listening and talking with each other, and I mean, I didn't want him to feel like I was like coming at him like, you're doing this wrong and this is wrong and, it's on you. And I don't think you felt that way. So anyway.
No, I don't think so. So just to kind of sum up, not so that we can keep moving, like what we said there, it's important to be able to talk. Like if you're the person that is feeling like something's out of balance in the marriage or the family or whatever, but you don't say anything, that's not husband or wife centric. That's just, if you feel that something's out of balance and you don't say something about it in a loving, honoring way, then it's like it's almost like it's on you. Like don't walk around with a chip on your shoulder because so and so doesn't get it that you're struggling. Like you didn't say anything. So you have to be able to talk, but you have to also be able to listen and receive as well. Like when she came to me and said, "Hey, this isn't working. Like we can't keep going like this indefinitely. I can do this for a season, but I don't see an end. Like something has to shift." I couldn't get offended at that. I couldn't be like, well, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Like I can't change, I have to work, the church needs whatever it needs, and I'm doing the best that I can, like leave me alone. You have to be able to hear it.
Come on.
Yeah.
Right? Man, woman, doesn't matter. You have to be able to hear it and actually receive it, like Mark and Abby talked about, so that you can work together to process it and get through it. So, verb usage of balance number 2, to offset or compare the value of one thing with another. And what I want you guys to be careful of is to guard against valuing one thing above another. Some people are going to feel like it's just their natural bent, like work is the most important thing, right? Because that pays the bills, and like I gotta work, and work trumps all other needs. That's out of balance. Some people are going to feel like family, our marriage is like the most important thing, and everything else has to sacrifice for the marriage or the family. That's out of balance. For some people, and especially in a Christian setting, we hear about it all the time where like, well, you know, God has called me or us to this, that trumps everything. Like if the ministry needs something, everything else has to wait.
Yeah.
That's out of balance. Okay? So be careful not to compare or offset the value of one thing with another. Saying that one thing is always more important than the other. Remember the seesaws. Okay? It's okay if for a season one thing has to trump.
Sure.
But don't leave somebody's feet dangling in the air. Okay? And so the point there is everyone needs to sacrifice somewhat. Like if you're doing this as a family or as a couple even, everybody's got to sacrifice somehow to see this balancing act work. But you have to make sure that everybody also benefits somehow too. So like the example that Jodi gave of me shifting my career roles, you know, from one full-time job to 3 part-time jobs, my family needed to see a benefit from that, not just me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like it can't just be that my life gets easier or less complicated. It also needs to be a benefit to them. So just look for that. We're doing okay. We got a couple minutes. Last one, number 3, the verb usage of balance. To compare debits and credits, as in an account, typically to ensure that they are equal. And if you're reading ahead, you can see that I'm using this as a word of warning, of caution to you guys. Again, with number 2, like comparing the value of things, don't keep accounts on each other. Don't allow, I think I call it later on, don't allow a debt culture to exist in your marriage or your family, where it's like, well, I'm giving all of this, so you owe me something in return. Do you see what I'm saying? That's not what Scripture describes to us in terms of giving. God says, I love a cheerful giver, right? And a cheerful giver means I give it to you and I expect nothing in return. If you're giving, expecting something in return, you might as well just keep your gift.
Absolutely.
Because, seriously.
Yeah.
Because it's just not fair.
Yeah.
And that's not the way you want your marriage to run. So just guard against that. Not keeping accounts on each other. I mean, the Bible says love keeps no record of wrongs. It doesn't mean that you become a doormat. It means that as you communicate, as you talk and listen to each other, and you care for one another, and you've created a system, right, like that you both agreed to in prayer, and you're like, this is how we're going to do. Now it's like, hey, you know, we talked about this. Like, I feel like it's a little out of balance or whatever, but you're not bringing it up from the perspective of you owe me now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, maybe you just want to sum up. We have like three main things that we want to make sure you guys.
Yeah, so the first one would be open communication, which Mark and Abby talked,
Yep.
so well about. Being willing to speak up and being willing to listen. So that's
That's
not
it.
what it comes down to a
Yep.
lot.
We just hit these.
And then understand your love language, your
Yeah.
spouse's love language, and your
Yeah.
children's love language, because I feel like sometimes you can be like, I'm gonna do this to show you how I love you, and that doesn't always show love to the person.
Repeat the second part you said, also your children's love language.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
got to know
Yeah.
your children's
Okay.
love language. If you have
That's
kids,
important.
you have to
Yes.
understand how
They
they
feel it.
receive love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, every child is different, and
Right.
you can't assume that.
Because if you're gonna get them a gift to show them that you love them, but that's not how they receive love, it's not
Sure.
really gonna do anything for them. Same with your spouse.
Yep.
It's just important, yeah,
Yep.
to know that. And then the third one is, don't lock yourselves in, always leave room for improvement, because things are always changing, and, you always wanna be open to,
Yep.
everything, your kids change, they get older, and dynamics change in the house, and dynamics change at church and, at work, and so, yeah, just always be looking to improve
Yeah.
where you are.
Yeah.
So-
Even without kids, it doesn't matter. I mean, because life is dynamic,
Right.
and so as soon as you establish, a system or whatever, like something's going to happen in life that's going to throw that system off. And like we talked about, you got to be flexible. If you dig your heels in and become inflexible, I'm sorry, ladies, it doesn't just mean heels that I'm talking to you. That's all of us. If you dig in and you're like, no, I'm not moving from this place, well, we can't work together.
Right.
You have to be able to I talk about it like trees. You are two people planted next to each other by God. And your job is, as you grow, to just bend in towards each other. Just keep bending towards each other. You don't have to uproot yourself or try to become something that you're not. You can stay planted right where God planted you. But just keep bending and growing in towards each other, more and more and more. You're going to give a little bit. You're going to give a little bit. Nobody's going to get all of what they want, but you just keep coming together in that way. And so finally, we want to encourage you, do not sacrifice your marriage or your family on the altar of ministry. Especially since we're in a Christian setting here, and I know most of you guys, like, don't ever, I know we're talking about balance, but like, don't ever sacrifice people on the altar of ministry, or like, well, God has called me to this, so, everybody else has to bow to that. No, that's not what God has established or ordered for the work that he calls us to do. Again, using Abraham and Sarah as an example, God called Abraham, but he called Sarah just as much. Knowing that Abraham was never going to be able to establish what God intended without Sarah.
Yeah.
And they both had to say yes to what God was doing and wanted to do. So we'll leave you guys with that. Blew through a lot there, but again, I hope the handout is helpful, that you guys can take it home and talk about it and pray. Thank you, sir. Pray through that. But yeah, any practical questions? Like, hey, you guys said this, but like, this is our reality. Like, how does that apply? Anything?
Yeah, I do. I know you didn't touch on it, but it kind of fits into what you're speaking of in regards to work. You said, I'm not sure if you're still doing 3 part-times or whatnot, but
I am.
Yeah. In regards to that, in regards to the business, when you do your yearly calendar, your monthly, your weekly, does that kind of have to trump most of the things that you guys plan?
You mean work?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
For
Yeah.
the most part, yes.
Like a business.
Because even in the church role, where like I'm pretty much dictating my schedule on those days, on my church days, I'm still not like independent. I'm not working for myself. I can't just be like, well, I'm taking the week off on a whim, right? So for the most part, yes. Especially if you're working for somebody else,
Right.
You got to do what you got to do. And so my suggestion would be, in that case, like, did you go out on your own? Are you doing your own?
Soon.
Right.
Okay. that becomes a whole nother set of challenges. I'm just going to talk about like if you're working for somebody else.
Yeah.
My suggestion is if you've got work demands on you that you cannot change, right, and you can't get out of it, there's no workaround, you know, you're not going to change careers and take 3 part-time jobs or whatever, then you have to just be honest with yourselves and be like, you know, okay, like we can't change this and it's currently out of balance, so like what needs to happen to get closer to balance, right? I feel like we missed that somewhere, but one of the things we wanted to talk about is own the things that you can own. Take control of the things that you can control. Sometimes we say that, you know, oh, work, like I can't do anything else. But if you really looked at your schedule and your time management, there's probably flexibility. None of us work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's probably room in there that if you just managed your time a little bit better, the time that you have, you could probably be better. You know, you could probably find more balance if we're honest. So yeah, like I get it. Work is work, and it has a set of demands that you probably can't change. But look for those other things. Control what you can control. Don't just use, oh, I can't control this as an excuse to not manage your time well. Good question.
That's good.
Any other
I
questions?
have another question.
Yeah.
So how do you guys, is there a time like within that daily that you guys connect spiritually, right? Like-
Yeah, great question.
Right.
So life is busy, right?
Mhm.
And it seems like the busier life is, the more focused you get on the things that you have to do, right?
Right.
Like you're not gonna just not show up at work
Right.
because you have to. So the first thing to go is spiritual things.
Come on.
When you feel overwhelmed and too busy, the first thing to go is your daily time with the Lord
Come on.
and in the Word. And that is a super dangerous place to be. It's not from a religious duty standpoint. That's just the reality.
Right.
So what we find for ourselves, and you know, you guys find your rhythm. Find your rhythm and your balance. For us, it's early in the morning. And our kids get up kind of early. Like they wake up like, woo, it's another day. Like, let's go. You know, like, and clockwork. Like the same time every day, whether we're on vacation or whatever. So we make the time sacrifice to be up earlier than them. We try. And then, again, there's no professionals here, right? Like we're just trying, and we do the best that we can. It's a goal.
Is that something you do together?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Or because, is it split up?
Right.
We do our own thing.
Okay.
Now I know a lot of people.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But sometimes, like sometimes we're in the same room, and so sometimes if he's
Okay.
reading something or something, and he's like, oh, he'll share it with me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
or if
You bounce
I'm the
back.
same way,
Okay.
like it's like, oh,
Right.
or I'm like, oh, I'm praying about this right now, like,
Yeah.
you know. So there's that connection. We also try to do. We're not great on like couples devotions. I don't know. We've tried it for like years, and we're always like,
It doesn't
oh,
work. Yeah,
I
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
this just doesn't work for us. But we try like at least, I don't know, once a week or something
We
to
try,
read
yeah.
through one. Just and then even if that isn't like, wow, that really like impacts us, maybe it brings us to like a conversation about something from that, or you know.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Right,
Basically, what
yeah.
I'm trying to say is having those spiritual connections.
Yeah.
It starts with you.
Okay.
You know, like each one of you has to be actively pursuing your
Right,
relationship with the Word and with the Spirit of God in order to even be in a position to have a spiritual conversation.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know there is people that like
They do it either
religiously,
together,
like
yeah, right.
do
Yeah.
it together. We just, I don't know.
Doesn't-
It
yeah.
just
We
has
haven't
never.
Yeah.
Um,
It hasn't worked for us.
You gotta
Yeah.
find-
One of the kids,
Yeah.
that gets up and then it's just like
You gotta find
Yeah.
what works for you. Some
Yeah.
people can stay up at night. You know, again, if you have kids, again, time management.
Right.
Like,
right.
for us, we learned this from our brother and sister-in-law. Get them to bed earlier. you know?
With the young kids now.
With
our
young
are
kids,
older,
yeah.
so it doesn't-
But now we just make them go in their rooms and like whatever. If you want to stay up, you can.
Right.
But you
Right.
need to be in there and be quiet
What
because
are
we
your
need our
ages?
time.
Yeah.
The ages
Our
now?
oldest is
Like that.
15, our youngest is 7.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah.
It's
They
coming,
know, I mean,
it's
and they
coming.
know too, I
I know.
mean, they know that, you know, we need time together, like, we'll tell them, like, we haven't
Yeah.
spent any time just the two of us, like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
guys can go read or do something, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so,
And in doing that,
Yeah.
you're teaching them, you're showing them by example that
You need a
the
designated
marriage
time.
is
Yeah.
just as
Right.
important
Right.
like, we
as the
love
kids.
you guys, but we've been with you all day.
Yeah. Go away. Yeah.
Here's a donut.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure, Dave, did I answer
Yeah,
your question?
definitely.
Okay. Any other
Yeah.
questions
I wouldn't
before?
feel pressure, you know, we have to do it this way.
Are people like waiting to come
Do
in?
what works for you guys
No,
more.
they're coming
No,
now.
they're
Connects
Okay, all right.
you guys,
Yeah.
so,
All right.
yeah.
Nice.
Good. We'll be around if you guys want to talk to us. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.